climate change, if we don't do something about it, is going to compromise and threaten the national security of the American people. And this conference we did this morning with General Sullivan, Admiral Lopez, was, I thought, stunning and stirring. These are two people who served their country for decades in uniform. There wasn't a lot of rhetoric there, just stating the facts. One of them said, I forgot which one, it might have been Admiral Lopez, the best thing you can do if you're a military person is to prevent conflict, prevent war. And they see this legislation as a way to do that. I hope my colleagues consider that. You know, with so much on the line here, with so much work that has been done by so many people. I'm not just talking about Senator Warner and myself, Chairman Baucus, who made all the difference in her leadership. Our staff, so many people outside of the Senate, environmentalists, business leaders, labor leaders, hunters, anglers, people, leaders in the faith community, really representing the public will of the American people, asking us to do something to protect them from global warming and its worst consequences. The bill that we've brought forth, the Climate Security Act, none of us will say that it's perfect. Of course it's not. I don't ever remember voting for a perfect piece of legislation here. But it's very good. And it creates a framework, a structure that will allow our country to begin a decades-long, this will go decades and decades to solve this problem. And future Congresses will come back and fix this that didn't quite work out the way we hoped. And we've got a lot of mechanisms in here, which we've described earlier, to kind of create fail-safes in here to protect our economy, our environment, our national security. So with all that on the line, I just have to say it is disappointing and frustrating that parliamentary maneuvers and all concerns about something really totally irrelevant to this really once in a career lifetime opportunity to do something to deal with this extraordinary challenge for our future, that those kinds of irrelevant issues are standing in the way potentially of a full debate on this matter. So tomorrow morning we come to a real turn in the road. And I think really the question is not whether you think this is a perfect bill or not, but whether you think it's a real good faith effort to deal with the problem of climate change, and whether you want to say by your vote that you believe that climate change is a real problem and a real threat to our future, that you want to be part of a solution to the problem. And hopefully, you know, some of my colleagues have said to me today, well, you know, I want to be part of a solution to the problem, but I'm now blocked from offering amendments. I always said that I'd vote for the bill if certain amendments were adopted. That's not literally true. The fact is, as is the regular order here in the Senate, if you filed your amendment, as everybody was duly notified, by 1 p.m. today, and cloture is granted tomorrow, that amendment will be fully debated next week and in the days ahead. But this is a moment to say whether the United States Senate is prepared, if not this year, soon, to deal with this very, very real threat to our environment, our economy, and our national security. Now, what's the rush, some people may say? Well, let me just quote first from a study by the Environmental Defense Fund that has found that each 2-year delay in starting emissions reductions doubles the annual rate at which we will need to reduce emissions by 2020 in order to ward off a global catastrophe. Because of the way the climate responds to the buildup of greenhouse gases, these gases stay trapped in the atmosphere. That's the whole problem. Then the heat from the Earth, as it bounces up, can't go anywhere, and it kind of stays there, and you have the greenhouse effect that is clearly warming the planet. The truth is that our children, our grandchildren, are already going to face inevitably consequences of global warming. What we're talking about now is beginning to reduce the greenhouse gases, the carbon pollution that causes the globe to warm, so that the consequences that we, our children, our grandchildren, and succeeding generations of Americans and people all over the world face are not disastrous or catastrophic, because that is totally within the realm of the possible. Many, many scientists say it is not only possible, it is probable if we don't do anything soon. So the longer we wait to start reducing this carbon pollution that's trapped up there, the more sharply we will need to reduce them in order to stay within our emissions budget, you might say. Let me add, we've just received an analysis from an economic modeling firm called On Location. They used the model done by the Energy Information Administration of the Department of Energy of the Bush administration on our Climate Security Act. Their analysis asks one simple question. What would happen if we wait 10 years to enact the exact same policies that are involved in the Climate Security Act? The exact same bill to achieve the same cumulative emissions reductions that scientists say are required to protect the climate. The results are striking, unsettling, and I hope motivating for quick action. But here's what this economic modeling firm found: that waiting 10 years to start on emissions reductions increases the cost of emissions allowances by 15%, and listen to this, doubles the overall cost of global warming to our economy. So whatever my colleagues are trying to say about the cost of this innovation driving market-based entrepreneurial incentive policy, are they prepared to double that number through delay? Are they prepared to saddle the American economy and our progeny with the burden of increasing severe and essentially irreversible climate impacts? Finally, I want to draw the attention of my colleagues to this graph, this chart, this description of what's happening. In previous debates, we have referred to the summer Arctic ice, the polar ice cap. This is, you know, when we started in our interest in whether there was really global warming and what its consequences what might be and whether we should do something about it, that was in the late 80s and early 90s. Then Senator Al Gore, I think, held some of the first hearings on this subject in 1988. Senator Kerry was involved at the time and shortly thereafter. We had to use computer models of projections of the way the weather was going to go to see what was happening and what might happen if we allowed the globe to warm. But we now have technology, satellite pictures, and real evidence to show us what impact global warming is happening. It's not a theory anymore. It's not a computer model anymore. Now, in earlier debates, these satellite pictures, this is from 2003, were used. Here's the North Pole at the green spot. The red line on the outside is where the polar ice cap was in 1979. The white here is where the polar ice cap was in pictures, satellite pictures taken in 2003. And it is 20% less than it was in 1979. 20% of the polar ice caps in 2003 had already melted away. Now, if that doesn't begin to stir your concerns enough about what's happening, go over here to a 2007 satellite picture. Again, the exterior red line is where the polar ice caps were in 1979. And look at this. In 4 years, well, let's say 5, because there were parts of those 2 years. In 5 years, the polar ice cap has melted away to the point where it's 40% now of what it was in 79. So look at this. 2003, it had lost 20%. 2007, it's lost 40%. So I asked a scientific fellow in my office, Alex Barr, and I want to give him credit. I said, so this is now raising the sea levels? He said, no, he taught me a lesson. I was one of those who at college took a course called Science for Non-Science Majors. So I'm still learning. He said, no, the ice melts as it was ice in a glass. It sits as it was ice in a glass. It has air in it, and when it ultimately melts because the water is warming, the total amount of water will be about the same, because this ice is all in the water. The polar ice cap is in the water. But here's 2 things. One is the fact that the ice cap is melting obviously shows that something's happening there, that the warmth is causing it to melt. But here's the danger. Here's Greenland. There, the ice is on land. It's not in the water. When I have now been taught, when the polar ice cap diminishes by 40%, the capacity of the ice to, just like wearing a white shirt, to absorb the sunlight rather than, and to reduce the impact on the temperature, diminishes. In other words, the water warms and warms the entire environment, and the real danger there is that the ice on land in Greenland will begin to melt. And when that begins to melt, which the scientists tell us will surely happen unless we reduce the amount of carbon pollution we're putting into the atmosphere, then we're in real danger, because then sea levels will begin to rise. Some scientists say with a suddenness that will create catastrophic results. I don't know that, but I can tell you that some credible scientists have told us that. So, you know, while the Senate fiddles, the globe warms. We can have these silly parliamentary debates, and we can get into side partisan fights about nominations, but this process is going on and getting worse with potentially catastrophic consequences for the United States of America, particularly, of course, as Greenland would melt to the enormous coastal regions of our country. There's been a pattern of human behavior in America over the last century. People are moving to the coasts. It's just where they want to be. They and their lifestyle are going to be threatened in the most consequential way unless we do something about that. So we've come a long way in this year. I'm not ready to give up about the cloture vote tomorrow, but I understand the realities, and I urge my colleagues, as they consider how to vote on it, to see it as your opportunity to say, not whether this Climate Security Act is a perfect bill, but whether you, 1, accept the reality of global warming, 2, want to do something about it and believe that a cap-and-trade system, which nobody's come out here in this debate and said, offered any other way to do it. Matter of fact, a lot of our most severe critics have said cap-and-trade is actually the way to do it. They just don't like this part of the way we've done it or that part of the way we've done it. That's a good argument to have. We welcome that debate. But this is a moment to say whether you want to do something to stop this clear and present danger to the security of the American people, or whether you want to continue to fiddle while the globe burns. I thank the chair, and I yield the floor.